Yeah, so to eliminate the fear, you need to get away from the future. Because typically a fear is something that we're worrying about that hasn't happened yet that we've created in our own mind. And by coming back to the present moment and focusing on what's right in front of us, it brings us away from that fear based, futuristic thing because 90 whatever percent of things we worry about never happen.
All right, we are live. My incredible guest today is James Lawrence. James has broken two Guinness World Records for endurance racing. He raced a full distance triathlon every day for 100 consecutive days. And prior to that, he raced 50 full distance triathlons for 50 consecutive days across 50 states. His latest book is titled Iron Hope Lessons Learned from Conquering the Impossible. James, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to be here too. So I remember first hearing about you when you did the 50-50,
Yeah.
the 50 triathlons, 50 days, 50 states.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, someone, a colleague of mine had pointed it out to me. And my first reaction was, "Oh, that's nice, but these must have been sprint length triathlons or maybe Olympic length at most, which are half, for those that don't know, half full distance." And once I learned that these are indeed full length Ironman style triathlons, I just completely blown away. And then I was like, my next reaction was, that's like a once in a lifetime feat. So surely he'll never, ever be able to do anything to top that. So I was wrong, clearly. No question, just more a statement of admiration and shock and awe at what you've done here a couple times.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to actually like dive right into the deep end, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. And I want to zoom in on this really horrific crash that you had on the bike. It was during this 100. I don't know, you can tell me which day it was along the journey.
59.
59. I mean, could have easily cost you the quest. Maybe if it didn't happen the right way, it could have cost you your life. Could you take me back to that scene of the crash? Like, walk me through what happened.
Yeah, so totally a freak accident. Like you said, we were on day 59 of every day for a quarter of a year. And business as normal. We were heading back on the home stretch. And by day 59 of 100 consecutive days, you're getting into a rhythm. You're sorting out a lot of the major problems. And then, of course, you're always dealing with catastrophes. Um, but we were just going along, and one of the riders, typically in Utah, especially that time of the year, it starts off cold and then the temperature rises. And so, as athletes, we wear a couple layers and then we'll peel them off as we go throughout the day. Well, an article of clothing accidentally slipped and went into a cyclist's brake system. And it was like the three of us just hit a brick wall. And she went straight up in the air in front of me, and I hit the undercarriage. And just next thing I know, I'm flying through the air. All I can see is like space. And then I get knocked unconscious. And I come back to, and two or three of my fellow cyclists are standing around me, just like trying to assess the situation. I have no idea what caused the accident. It was so abrupt, it was so violent, it was so fast that there was just so much confusion as I'm laying there in the middle of the road, like trying to figure out what happened.
No, I mean, there's the shock of it all. I mean, you were knocked unconscious, so now you come to. And was there a lot of physical pain? What? Because I know you obviously kept going, and then you did another 59, so another 41
Yeah.
days after that. But it sounds like it was a pretty serious incident. Like, were there pretty big injuries involved?
Yeah, for sure. So I had road rash everywhere. Obviously, the concussion. I didn't tell anybody I was knocked out because I was like, oh, they're gonna make it. They're gonna make me go see a doctor, and we're not going. And so,
Mm.
but initially with cyclists, when you crash, especially one at that volume, at that speed, that velocity and that speed, we break collarbones. It's one of the most common injuries, and that sidelines you. Like, that is so painful. They can't really set the bone. You can't cast it. You just have to let it heal. And if it needs pins, all those things have to happen. And so that instantly, when I kind of came back to, I kind of immediately felt my collarbones to make sure they weren't broken. And I didn't really have major pain anywhere because I was 59 days into this challenge, over 7,500 miles done, and you kind of hurt everywhere anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And then that impact in the moment and the chaos and the confusion, you just big adrenaline dump. And so in that moment, it was just like relief because nothing's broken. I'm standing back up. The possibility, I'm looking around, assessing what's happening. The possibility hits that we can continue, and so the adrenaline drop, meaning the exit of the adrenaline experience, happened much later, about mile 22 of the marathon that night. Mm-hmm. And so that's when my body started to feel everything from the crash, from the cumulative 60 days or 59 days. We found out later that I'd cracked my L5 and had a bulging disc from that point on for the remainder of those 41 days.
Wow. I've had a bulging disc before, so
It's not fun.
nerve pain is not something you can deal with.
Yeah,
So
and so
there's getting
so
over the physical aspects, obviously.
yeah.
But and I'm not trying to project myself onto you, but I'm just thinking of the emotions. Like, was there anger? And I don't mean so much that you have to be angry at someone if there was someone's quote unquote fault, but just angry at how quickly this quest could have come to an end after all this work and training that you did, or maybe fear that it could happen again. And I mean, any emotions that you had to sort of overcome, or the adrenaline just trumped all of that, and you could just sort of keep going.
No, and there was never any anger. We realized that we were in danger every pedal stroke of every single day. We were putting ourselves out on those roads, and so it was a very in our face reality that something like that could happen. And it was a total accident. I mean, we've put in hundreds of thousands of hours on bikes and never seen that specific type of thing happen. And so it was the fear the following days of that's going to happen again, right? Because in your mind, there was no chance for me to unwind or decompress or talk about the accident because it's consecutive days. So I had to get up the next day and get back on my bike. And so that, for the next 4 or 5 days, it was kind of like trauma, moments where I kept like reliving that crash over and over in my head. So I finally had to walk myself through it and just be like, we're fine. That was such a rare thing. And you have to look back at your body of experience and go, okay, that's never happened before. And the chances of it happening again. So really it was just a conversation with myself and a fear-based voice and what it looks like to give in to your fear and to continue to chase your dreams. And so it was kind of one of those moments where you were like, yeah, is this the moment that I lose the battle with my mind and it paralyzes me? Or do I win that moment, that conversation and keep going?
Yeah. And I want to come back later to this theme of getting over our fear because I know you have some good techniques that you use. But just to rewind the clock on you a little bit here, James. So I'm guessing when you're a kid, you didn't say that one day you'd like to grow up and do 100 triathlons in 100 days and become a speaker and go all over the world and talk to audiences. What did you have aspirations? What did you think you were going to do? But walking back to how
Yeah,
you were wired.
none of that was in my future, in my cards, in the tarot readings. I mean, none of it was in there. Total shock to me. But I've also lived my life in a way that I listen to my gut, I chase my dreams, and different doors opens and takes me down different paths. And so I've kind of never had a set plan. I've always been allowed life to kind of take me where I need to go, and I show up and take accountability for my part in the hard work and everything. But I allow life to kind of just guide me. I might change careers again down the road. But when I was growing up, I mean, I knew early on I was a dreamer. I knew I also had an incredible work ethic through sports. And then growing up, I just fell in love and gravitated towards wrestling and did that full time and then graduated and fell in love with golf. And I was going to be, my dream was, yes, okay, I'm going to be a professional athlete. It's like going to be golf.
Mhm.
And then I started to have a little family and realized working at a pro shop at a golf course wasn't paying the bills for two little new baby girls. And so I had to start taking life seriously. And the entrepreneur side of me really came out. I started a mortgage company and got my brokerage license and just started doing business until the '08 economic crash happened. And the mortgage industry was the center of that. And ultimately we lost everything over the course of the next few years. And had an opportunity to hit rock bottom and reset our lives and what we wanted to do with it.
So so back up one chapter here. So the plan, it sounds like you're a pretty competitive athlete. So the plan
Yep.
was, could you make it could you make it on the pros,
Yep.
on the PGA as a golfer? And when it looked like that just wasn't going to be the reality, then you sort of pivoted. And I think you became a mortgage broker.
Yep.
Is that right? So before the meltdown, while you were in the midst of that career, were you good at it? Did you enjoy it? What was that like?
I was great at it, only because I'm a people person, and that's kind of a face-to-face kind of business, or was when we were doing it. Technology's taken over a lot of things now, but I was great
Mhm.
at it, and frankly, I'm great at anything I try to do because I put everything into it. And so we had a really successful mortgage company and great business going. We were living the life, that American dream, and then overnight, literally swept out from underneath us. And we had some really hard decisions to make when, you Glenn, you remember the moment they knock on your door and take away your home. And at that point of our journey, we had 5 babies, and so that was, 5 kids, ages 6 and under, and
Mhm.
you just have no source of income, and you're now homeless. And so that's kind of a moment in your life where you're like, "Oof, something needs to happen."
Wow. And you certainly weren't alone there, but it probably feels like you're all alone when it's
Oh
happening
yeah,
to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as a provider and the weight of the world on your shoulder, and you're looking around, you got 5 kids and a wife, and that weight feels enormous. And even though, yeah, people are there with you and supporting you, the action and responsibility is all on you, and
Yeah.
that can be very daunting, especially when you're in the lowest of lows in that moment.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, and I don't know if it was this period, but you can set the timing for me. I think you were 28 maybe when you did this short, like a 4 mile fun run with your wife, and you sort of barely made it across the finish line.
Yeah.
When was that in relation to this meltdown? And was that the impetus to start like really getting in shape and thinking about could there be an alternative path?
Yeah,
How did
so
that
the
sort
the
of,
the,
yeah.
the 4 mile fun run happened kind of, when we were having success in business and whatnot, and I realized, okay, we're successful here. I need to get back to prioritizing my health, and it was something that my wife and I wanted to do together. And then fast forward, you go from running to struggling through that and saying, okay, I really want to figure this out because it shouldn't be this
Mhm.
hard, and I shouldn't be this pathetic. And so I found triathlon, fell in love with the swim, the bike, and the run, and then my wife were just doing a lot of racing together. And then I was starting kind of as an entrepreneur, doing a little side job as coaching some athletes. And when the economic crisis hit, it was an opportunity for me to shift into something I actually enjoy doing because mortgage, it's not really exciting. It's a thankless job, but it was lucrative. And so when that was taken away from me, I was already
Mhm.
on this path of coaching other athletes and helping them understand this steep learning curve of sport and mind control and nutrition and strength training, all these things. And
Mhm.
it's always been my passion in sports and sports psychology and the biomechanics of it. But I just got derailed because I had to provide for my family. This was an opportunity to now combine my passion with building an entrepreneurial business around it.
And so, at what point did the coaching others turn into maybe there's some big quest that you can set off and do, and then use that as some kind of platform? Or where did that come along?
Yeah, so it was prior to the first. We broke our first two world records were actually the most half Ironmans done in a year, all official events, which was in 2010. And then in
Mhm.
2012, we broke the world record for the most Ironmans anybody's ever done around the world, all official events. And so we lost everything in '08 and 9 and 10.
Mhm.
And as I was coaching, I was like, man, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking I need to separate myself from the competition. I need to stand out. And I was like, man, I wonder if I broke a couple world records, if that would really help with media and PR and some marketing, things like that. And it really
Mhm.
worked. We broke the first world record, broke the second world record. And then that gave us the knowledge and confidence and experience to tackle something like the 50. And then the 50 Ironmans, 50 days, 50 states. That's what really put us on the map and made this a full-time thing.
Wow. So you mentioned a number of whys behind the endeavor. you know, and there's charity, there's doing it to empower others, there's doing it because it's your job. But there seemed to be one why that you point out on the 100 now we're talking about that I thought almost trumped all the others and maybe helped you through all the pain and agony. And it traced back to the 50-50 that you did and something that happened. And not everyone knows the story. Would you mind sharing that story?
Uh, be more specific with what you're exactly
Yeah,
referencing.
so it seemed like there was something that happened in terms of you're not being able to do the official running
Oh, sure.
element on one of
Yeah.
the things, and this seemed to turn into some kind of fuel for you later because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so during the 100, during the 50 and the 100, we were doing it to raise money for charity. During the 50, I had 5 little kids, and so we were raising awareness and funds for the childhood obesity epidemic that exists today. Crazy statistics out there about it, but the biggest one is like as parents, we're slated to outlive our kids because they're so sick. And that's just a terrible statistic to me. And then 6 years later, when the 100 happened, my kids were older, and then sex trafficking and enslaved young men and women became very apparent to us as we had those that age demographic, and so we raised over $1 million for sex trafficking charities, which was incredible honor and a huge why. But there was also that personal reason that you were talking about. During the 50, I'm kind of wired in a way that when I do something, I hope to do it to perfection, but then realize that we're all human and we make mistakes, and it's very, very difficult. But I always want to like redo things and make them better.
Mhm.
And when you're charting a path and breaking barriers that nobody's visited before, it comes with obvious complications and a unique set of rule books and a lot of eyes that are watching it. Well,
Mhm.
we crashed on day 18 because I fell asleep on the bike, and then day 19 we're in Mississippi, and we were pushed indoors. It was hurricane conditions, really, really loud weather warnings. Stay inside; it's extremely dangerous. And so during the last part of our marathon, I decided because of the crash the day before, I was going to jump on an elliptical machine to cover the last few miles so that we could continue on and raise money for the charity. Well, we posted that picture online, and the elites in the industry just like blew up. And they were like, "You cheated. We got you. We knew you couldn't do it." All these things. And they're just like, bah, 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 keyboard warriors, bullying, all these things. Quit, go home, your journey's over. And it's interesting. I'm always fascinated by this, that like people want to watch other people fail. I'll
Oh,
never I'll never
100%.
I'll never understand it, and I'm starting to like, okay, this just all stems from jealousy. They wish they
Jealous,
were out.
100% jealousy. Yeah.
They wish they were outside participating, doing something, yet they're sitting at home criticizing someone who's out there doing it. And so we were like, we made a decision to keep going. We're like, okay, that was, I guess that was, the wrong thing to do, but we're not. It's not an official world record. We're just trying to do the best we can and be out here. And so from that moment on, we're
But
obviously,
just to clarify for listeners, you did the full amount of
oh yeah,
distance with the elliptical that you would have had to do on the run,
yeah,
and then
hundred
went
percent,
right back to the running the next day it was like a
yeah,
one-time
yeah,
side
and
thing
it's
just to ensure you could keep going, and yet all
yeah,
this negative
and one of the
reaction.
interesting parts is, so I totaled up all the math. It was 7,030 miles that we covered, and that moment on the elliptical that evening for those last few miles represented 0.24% of the journey.
Mm.
And so it's a beautiful example of like, hey man, I hope you're showing up in your life and you're executing at a level of excellence 99.76% of the time. And don't let someone else's opinion of that 0.24% of your journey impact how you proceed. And that's what we're seeing society do, is they're giving all their power and all of attention to that small group, that 0.24% that wants to see you fail. And you're doing yourself an incredible disservice by giving in and giving away your power because it's simply just their opinion. We were doing something that nobody else had done before. And so, yeah, as we're leading into the 100, one of my personal reasons was, no, I'm going to show you exactly who we said we were, because we did it the first time. We're going to do it again. And not only that, we're going to double it. And so the first 50 days was really a massive career dice roll for me, because I don't pull off the first 50 days and that small group was like, I told you so. You didn't do it the first time, you didn't do it the second time. And so for me, once I made it past the first 50 days, it was like this huge exhale. I got to reset my own history to perfection. I got to silence every critic. And then we went on to do double the amount and really kind of put the cherry on top for us in terms of like, this is who we said we were, and we showed you again who we were.
Yeah. I mean, I know it wasn't necessarily the primary motivation, but it probably didn't hurt to have that as something
Yeah, you stack,
to
you stack all those different big reasons why together, and then you can draw
mm.
from different ones at different times, and and each one has its own purpose and reason. But you put all those together, and you become an incredibly powerful force.
Well, you started this 100 quest in March, and we're talking Utah. So
Yeah,
I think it was 19 degrees.
18. Yeah,
For
18
those
degrees on day
listening
one.
overseas, 19 degrees Fahrenheit, I
Yeah.
should say, right? Um, so help me out here, James. You didn't think there'd be sufficient torture with the 100 triathlons, so you thought you'd throw sub sub freezing temps into the mix as well.
Yeah,
You couldn't wait a couple months.
yeah, well, so there's that. Utah has 4 beautiful seasons, and I did it in Utah because it was close to my home. My home was going to be home base because the concept was, okay, if we're going to double the 50, then we need to have like systems and structure and
Mhm.
protocols and team in place, and we need to remove the chaos and confusion of the enormity of the United States and all the logistics. And so that was kind of
Yeah.
the plan behind it. And then, you know, in terms of the way my body functions, I can function better in colder temperatures than I can in warmer temperatures. I can bundle up. Hot is that opposite end of the spectrum that like stomach issues start to happen. It's
Mhm.
really hard to cool yourself down. It's easier to warm yourself up than it is to cool yourself down. And so I was willing to deal with that problem and start a little early because Utah gets really hot in the summer. And I thought my body would be more adapted to being outside later in the journey. So I need to start early, and we're going to face some temperatures. Naively, I looked at the average high for the day in March.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Those are great temperatures. Not realizing we finished the swim at 7 in the morning and we're just getting on the bikes right when the sun was coming up in really a transitional winter to
Mm.
spring season for us. And yeah, day number one is 18 degrees. And man, for at least 45 days, when we started the bike ride, it was either snowing, raining, or sub-zero temperatures because it didn't creep into the 40s and 50s until noon, and by that time we're getting off the bike. And so, for at least the first half, I've never been so cold in my life, and every single morning it was just like, please, just warm up a little bit, and it was our toes and our hands, and we tried everything every single day to try to mitigate this, and it was really preventing people from coming out and joining us, which is why over the course of the 100 days, as the weather got nicer, you started to see a lot more people come out. We'll
Oh,
call them fair weather supporters.
yeah. I mean, I've done a few marathons. I've done a couple of century rides. I know some of those people like it a little chillier, but chillier is like in the 40s, kind of chilly.
Yeah,
Not not the
even 50s is chilly with the wind. When you're in the 20s and 30s, it is with the wind chill because we're going 20-22 miles an hour,
yeah.
and so it is bone chilling cold.
Gosh.
And now that's drawing more energy because your body's trying to warm you up, and so now you're becoming really inefficient in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like trying to conserve energy to do a quarter of a year endurance challenge because you're so cold and your body's burning calories just trying to keep you warm.
Mm. So one of the themes in the book is not looking too far ahead.
Hmm.
It can be anxiety provoking. Just focus on the here and now, as you say. So was thinking about that one. Is it a reflection about not looking ahead in a race, as in not looking at the finish line, or more about life in general?
Both they parallel each other so
Okay.
beautifully. In life and in racing, you have to be prepared. And
Mhm.
by no stretch of the imagination are we saying have no game plan and show up every single day.
Yeah.
But what you have to do is, and Ironman training is a perfect example for this. Like, let's say, Glenn, you came to me, you're all fired up, and you're like, brother, I want to do an Ironman triathlon. And I'm like, okay, great. This is going to be a year training process. You and I, we're going to do this together. We're going to tackle the 140.6 miles. And you're like, awesome, I'm in. And you're all excited. And we create this plan
Mhm.
from the race day finish line all the way to today. And then I'm like, okay, brother, tomorrow's test day. We're going to test your fitness. We're going to do a run test. We're going to do a bike test. And we're going to get into the workouts. And you literally struggle through the test.
Mhm.
And you're like, I can't I can't possibly do an Ironman. That was hard, right? So now we've looked ahead. We know the plan, it's an Ironman, or we know the goal, it's an Ironman. We reverse engineered it to every step. Now here's the important part. Now you just got to be focused on today and not get too far ahead of yourself and start worrying about things you can't control, catastrophizing. And so for you, we've got the goal. We know the Ironman. We've already signed up. We paid the money. You've hired the expert. It's me. We've laid out the entire plan. All you got to worry about is what you have to do today. And if you take care of today, tomorrow's going to take care of itself. And by the time we get to the Ironman, if you've done that every single day, that day becomes a victory lap. And so by being super present, you've already looked into the future. You've already dreamed. And then you've taken the appropriate step and said, this is going to take work and action. And you reverse engineered it to the very next step. And then you're always just focusing on that step. That's a guaranteed system for anything in life for you to win. Mm-hmm. Dream big, reverse engineer it to small, manageable daily tasks, and focus on today.
So extrapolate that to life for a minute for you. So when you plan these events, I assume you've got to back up months and months and months, not just maybe a year and a half, not just for training, but if you have sponsorships, assembling your team. I know you had a whole team involved, the logistics, especially with that 50-50, et cetera. So how, and I know you mentioned earlier that you don't necessarily plan everything in your life. You like life taking you where it will. So how do you balance the planning and the spontaneity? How far out do you look? When you set goals, is it only within the next year, or do you look beyond that? Do you have bucket list items? How do you think about it?
Yeah, for sure. So I like big picture first, and I like to pick a target 1, 2, 3 years away. But I know that, and I'm not, I'm not dead set on it, right? And so I know that things can change and evolve over time, and that's movable. But I like to know that I have that target and where I'm trying to get to. But again, I'm back reverse engineering it all the way. And so I know the race that I'm doing in September. It's in Sweden. It's the World Championships for the swim run race. I'm not training for that right now because I've got a 5-day mountain bike stage race in Croatia before that. And then I've got a half Ironman in Canada in June. I'm not even thinking about that race right now. But they're on my calendar. I know that they're there, but I'm so focused on, with the knowledge that I have to be aware that goes part of there, but my focus needs to be on bike. And so my bigger volume and sessions are going to be bike, but I know that I've got some swim and some run in there because I'm focused on a micro goal and I'm not to that next micro goal yet, right? Mm-hmm. So even the half Ironman before the World Championships, I know the World Championships is on the calendar, but I'm not looking past this Croatia race right here because I'm going to do myself a disservice if I'm not really attentive to the process it takes to get ready for that race. Overall, I'm going to be well-rounded and very strong. But if I'm distracted on this build, that's going to take away from my experience in Croatia.
When you mentioned earlier, like, oh, this may not even be your last career, you're not looking ahead. Like, if there's going to be someday in the future, I assume, hopefully a long time from now, where I don't know that you're going to be doing 300 triathlons in 300 days, when you're 70 years old. So do you let that just sort of go where it goes and let that road meander and just, you're sort of looking like out maybe a couple years, few years
for sure.
What like you're doing today. Yeah.
I know my physical races over the next 2 years. I'm building towards them. And so I've kind of got that planned out. I know my speaking career is, in a tremendously busy season for me, meaning the next 2, 3, 4 years if I choose. And so I'm focusing on that. But as I'm focusing on those major things, the next 2 years of racing that I'm doing and my speaking career, I'm also looking for doors and opportunities and relationships to happen that is going to mold what's coming next. Because I know there's going to be a next after my speaking's done or we're done coaching or I'm moving on from competitive racing. I know 1,000% there's a next because I'm going to still keep living my life. But I don't know what that next is. And that's the beautiful thing. I am just open to whatever that is. And I'm existing every single day, really focused on the tasks that I have at hand. But I'm paying attention and I'm meeting people and I'm interacting and I'm having new experiences because something's going to happen. And I don't want to control it too much because we've never really been in that much control anyways. And so I control what's right in front of me. And I know there's a plan clearly laid out for me. And I'm just going to watch it unfold. I heard this great quote. It says, "Your future is none of your business." Um, and
You know
again,
who
if you
said
keep,
that one?
well, I don't know who said it, no, but I do
All right,
love
I gotta
it.
look it up.
Yeah, your future's none of your business.
I like it. All right, it's going up on my social media tomorrow.
Yeah.
Uh, the pain, James, the pain that you had to endure, I know was
Okay.
excruciating, almost from the get-go. So this is a quote of yours, and this is describing the pain during the running portion of one of those triathlons you were doing during the 100. It's not just my shins that ache. My feet are plagued by blisters. Several toenails have blackened and fallen off. My hips and shoulders already feel sore from exertion. My mouth is full of thrush, a fungal infection that's flared up because I'm exhausting my immune system. My lips are swollen and blistered from winter sun, cracked and bleeding from icy winds. It sounds fun. So talk to me about pushing through that kind of pain, which I know is not a one-time thing. That's a day in, day out sort of thing you're having to endure.
Yeah. I think it's a sliding scale as we're moving through it, right?
Hmm.
Over time, I got more and more uncomfortable because of the compounding effect of it. And so, as it's getting worse and worse, I'm also moving my baseline for tolerance, meaning I'm becoming more tolerant of it as it is. It'd be one thing if I was like normal and then woke up on day 660 with that cumulative pain, but I experienced every day along the way to
Hmm.
60. And because of that, I'm also training my mind to move the baseline of handling the pain. And so the mind and the body are progressing in terms of the body's weakening, but the mind is strengthening. And they're happening at the same time. And so as you continue to get worse physically, your mind starts to become more powerful mentally because you're moving at the same type of growth and destruction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. There are a couple of tactics that you mentioned. Love for you to maybe expand on these. One of them is it sounds like you do a lot of positive self-talk during these events. Like you're actually
Yeah.
talking to your aching body parts and telling them,
Yeah.
listen, you're going to be okay. You've got to get through this. You've got to cooperate. Is that really true? And does that help talking to your body almost like it's a separate entity in a way?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I believe the mind and the body and the spirit, they all have to interact and commingle together, and they all have their own unique roles. And I think they're friends with each other, and they need to get along and work together, and one can encourage the other. And sometimes our body proves to our mind that it's capable of so much more, and then other times our mind is like the powerhouse, and it shows the body that it too can do more in different things. And so they all have to work together. And for me, it's underneath the spirituality umbrella. I think you have to have
Mhm.
all of these things. You have to be physically tough, mentally tough, and spiritually grounded. And so really to get good at managing pain in your mind, you have to have experiences. And as you continue to have these experiences, you become more resilient. That's why I say you can't go from 0 to 100. Like you couldn't wake up completely out of shape and go, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I'm going to go do 100 consecutive Ironmans. Because there's a ton of work in between, the struggling through a 4 mile fun run and 20 years later doing 100 consecutive Ironmans.
Yeah.
And people are like, what's more important, mental strength or physical strength? And it's 100% of both.
Hmm.
And what that means is that 350-pound dude getting up off the couch wanting to do 100 consecutive Ironmans, even if he is the most mentally tough person on the planet, he's going to reach physical limitations in terms of
Hmm.
time cutoffs and speed and ability and recovery rates, all those things, because he hasn't prepared in that way. And then the same thing, if you've got the most physically fit specimen who doesn't know how to push himself mentally and win conversations in his head, he's also
Hmm.
going to fail. And so, as humans, to your original question, as humans, we can't have two thoughts at the same time, meaning we can't be being negative and we can't be positive at the same time.
Hmm.
Darkness can't exist in the presence of light. And so, to eliminate and erase negative or darkness out of our minds, we have to have the skill set to bring in a positive moment in our lives, in our past, or change the conversation. And this was a fun test I heard online the other day, and it was to prove that we control our thoughts. And so, anybody that's listening right now, in your head, scream your own name as loud as you can. Scream your name really, really loud. Okay. Now, if you did that, now what I want you to do is I want you to whisper your name. Whisper your own name as quiet as you can. And most everybody had the ability to scream their name and immediately then whisper their name. And it was different. And if that's true, which we just kind of did a case study of it right there, a small sample size, but that means we have control over our thoughts. And so when the negative voice is screaming and yelling, it takes experience and knowledge to be able to change that conversation and replace it with a whispering voice, one that's more positive, one that's more tender. And over time, you can recognize when you get into that emotional state of screaming and yelling and negativity, and then having your toolbox the ability to go and replace that thought. It takes practice. These are skill sets that we develop.
Yeah.
You can't just go to a depressed person and be like, be more positive. No,
Right.
we got to take them through a very lengthy process. It's a skill set. It's like I can't take an overweight person and like tomorrow we're going to do an Ironman. You can't take a sad person and make them happy overnight. Now we can start doing activities in our lives and start putting in the work to start to see change, to start to rewire the neurological pathways in our brains. Like that's all possible. But the only way you have change up here is motion creates emotion. Like we have to start moving and doing things in order to change the emotions in the way that we feel, to reshape the way that we think and perceive life. That's the whole sequence you have to go through.
I think you had mentioned that there were times where you would go through like childhood memories of yours, positive memories growing up
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And when you're doing things like this, do you think is the essence of it that you're sort of trying to just distract your mind and focus elsewhere?
Oh,
Or
100%.
is it, and these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but is it also that the positive memories are giving yourself like a dopamine rush, and that's creating some sort of halo so it can insulate the pain because you're right. These aren't just negative thoughts. These are like it's
Yeah.
like your whole body is aching and you're in misery. So is
Yeah, and when you're in
yeah.
suffering, when you're suffering and focusing on the suffering and the pain, time kind of slows down. And when you find yourself in La La Land and Dreamland and Happy Gilmore's Happy Place, all of a sudden
Mhm.
time starts to accelerate. And so that's also the importance of shifting where your mind is it's the acceleration of time. Because you want to get through the suffering moment as much as you can. And so I'd be hard to convince in most people that we know, yes, there's outliers, there's war-ridden zones and tragic upbringings. But for our culture and most people, we can think up of one, if not two, great moments in our lives. Growing up, a birthday, a gift, somebody made us smile, a laugh at one time. You have to hold on to that one or two moments. And you have to be armed with those in your pocket to when those things happen, you bring yourself to it. And it's psychological. When we change the space that our mind is living in and what we're experiencing, it is a physical reaction. Your heart rate will drop. You will calm down. Anxiety will start to subside. And now you can start now moving. So you're like, you had anxiety. We got to calm yourself down. We got to switch the way we're thinking. We got to have that emotional or physical response. Then we got to take action and do something, because it's really hard to be anxious and depressed when you're in the mode of doing and activity and creativity and doing all these things. Man, all of a sudden, miraculously, some of that situational anxiety and depression starts to vanish away.
Yeah. It's been some years. I remember I interviewed, I think his name was Ben LeCompte. He swam across the Atlantic Ocean, and he would talk about how you almost have to disassociate your mind from your body.
100%.
And he would sit there for hours and hours and hours on days, swimming, which forget the pain, just the repetitive nature of it
Yep.
over and over. It can sort of drive someone crazy. So he would have just what you're talking about. He would let his mind go elsewhere while his body is sitting there in the water suffering.
And it was wild. I had that experience multiple times during the Conquer 100, and we talk about it in the book Iron Hope. And it's a wild experience that you just can't get to. It's the ultimate flow state. But again, it takes practice of putting yourself in difficult situations, winning those conversations, pushing the boundaries of what your mind and body are capable of doing and working together. And I did. I got to the point where like it was intense, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was able to like 3D outside body experience watching myself down on the trail as I was going through the motions. Like I can see it super vividly as it was happening. And again, it takes practice to be able to get into that hyper flow state to where it's an out of body. You're watching yourself perform to perfection. And it's this really, really cool separation perspective as it's happening. But like I said, that takes a lot of experience doing that. You're not going to wake up and go, I'm going to go do my first hard thing. I'm going to run up that mountain and have that ability to get to that level of flow. Like that was 20 years worth of really difficult mental and physical challenges. Like our resume is like deep in terms of like how many times we've had to go to the well and build up that resilience and that skill set to be, this is the moment, it's really real, I have to separate.
Okay, so I want to talk about conquering fear. We touched on this earlier, and it sort of relates to the focusing on the here and now. And for you, it seems like the fear, if that's the right word, fear, anxiety, was around the running element. That was like your least favorite part of the triathlon.
It was the most
And
painful during the 100 for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Because
well,
I was,
it
because I
just
was, because I was broken, and every moment was just like so excruciating.
and it just, I mean, for anyone, even if you're a good runner, it just takes the most toll on the body to do it
Yes, and
day in, day out.
we were injured
So
by day 5 with 95 more to go, broken.
yeah, the whole side story we won't have time for about it. I think a doctor that went and created some special contraption for you that helped you actually, somehow manage the pain, which is it was an amazing story. Um, but you talk about one of the ways that you manage fear, if you will, is by starting small and breaking this big goal into these small, manageable pieces. So taking the marathon as an example, rather than feeling overwhelmed about this 26.2 coming up, you break it down as I think it's like eight and a half 5K runs. And you're like, oh, I can do a 5K run. Maybe not back when you did it with with your wife back in the day, but since then, that's manageable. So it's sort of one 5K, after another. So does that kind of technique, does it eliminate the fear or essentially just sort of help you manage it better and push through it?
Yeah, so to eliminate the fear, you need to get away from the future. Because typically a fear is something that we're worrying about that hasn't happened yet that we've created in our own mind. And by coming back to the present moment and focusing on what's right in front of us, it brings us away from that fear-based, futuristic thing because 90 whatever percent of things we worry about never happen. And so it's really this massive distraction. And bringing it right back to the moment is what allows you to succeed. And just like you said, breaking that marathon down into 8x4 or whatever it is, I would do that once I get closer to the end of the marathon because I get to the point where it's 20 miles. And really, that's where a lot of people start to struggle because they're like, man, I'm beat. I'm exhausted. I still have 6 miles to go, which probably when they started this journey was the furthest they'd ever run, a 10K.
Hmm.
And so for me, when I get to mile 20, I'm like, oh, I only have a 10K to go. I've done this 100 times. And then I get down to where, which is a significant number for me because of my journey, I'm like, oh, this is the 4 mile fun run distance left that I started with. And I did that 20 years ago and I've really built upon that. I can do 4 miles. And then I get to the point where it's a 5K. I've just got 5K to go. And then I get to the point where it's just a mile. That's only 4 times around the track. And they get to the point where it's like, I just have 1 more lap around the track. And then I'm finished, right? And so really from 20 on, I have these really distinct benchmarks on how to get there. And around that same concept, we did the same course every single day in Utah. Mm-hmm. And they were like, man, that is going to get mind numbing. That's going to grind on you mentally. That's a terrible idea. You need to switch this up. And I was like, no, what you're not understanding about psychology is the repetitive nature of something now becomes, I'm executing it consciously unconscious. And I'm just, I know where every corner is. I know where every pothole is. I can kind of check out and go flow state and my body's going to take over because it's so repetitive of something that I've done in the past. And if I got into a moment in that day where it's very difficult, I could just be like, I did this yesterday. Surely I can do it today. Right? And so you get to that point where success breeds success and confidence breeds confidence. And this little trick to gain, to really start and gain momentum in our lives, what people do is they try to go from that 0 to 100, and 100% of the time they fail because they weren't prepared. They've heard to set big goals, but they're not respecting the time frame it takes to get there. And so once you have all these incremental steps in between and you start winning at those little ones, remember I said you create a winning moment. And now you're starting to accumulate these small wins. And now you're starting to gain success and create momentum. Because the person that went from 0 to 100 and failed, he tries to go 0 to 100 again and he fails. And now all of a sudden he's reprogramming himself, and all he does is associates himself as a failure. And then he stops trying. To where this person over here that was like, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow and I'm going to take the steps and I'm going to create this momentum and I'm going to gain knowledge and I'm going to gain experience. Boom. Now I'm a different person. Now my perspective changes. I'm better. I can show up in a different capacity. I'm learning. I'm opening doors. I'm creating relationships. Boom. I'm a different person. Now all of a sudden, you're on your way to achieving that really big goal that initially scared you, that in as its whole is incredibly terrifying. But with all those little small manageable not only are you winning, you're gaining momentum and confidence as you're going. And this person over here that keeps failing, now they think they're a victim or they're a failure. They turn into a victim, and then now we've spiraled.
Hmm. I know the Endeavor was a pretty big community event. Yeah, a lot of supporters.
For sure.
There was this quote of yours I read, I think, in an interview about it's not just getting to the mountaintop; it's how many people you bring along the way.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, that's mine.
Did yeah did bringing people along, do you think, actually help you get to the mountaintop, so to speak?
Yeah, it's interesting because we were on a podcast too, and it's called The Grit Show. And the name, The Grit Show, kind of came about because every single night as we were on day 50, 60, 70, or 80, people would come to join us, and they were doing their very first Ironman or their first marathon together or their first 10K. They were pushing their boundaries on that day with us just to be part of it because we were kind of all suffering together. And, as we were deep into the journey, we were kind of into a rhythm. We knew what to expect. We were in our groove. This was kind of the daily routine for us. Well, if somebody comes just to join us for a day, it's very challenging. And every single time when someone would start to limp or we could see like a blister forming or a hitch would happen on the run, we'd be like, welcome to the Grit Show. And it became this whole thing of where the community really came out. And to your point, we supported each other. And they inspired me while I was out there because they're coming out and they're suffering. So they're pushing me to not quit because I can't quit. I got to lead the way here. And then there's often times where their willingness to show up and suffer would motivate and inspire me. So yeah, it really takes a team together to do this kind of thing. And at different points, different team members are going to be on their highs and their lows. And then we draw inspiration and power from those people that are, during their highs, and they bring everybody back up, and then sometimes we dip and we bring back up. And so it's this whole cycle that we're more powerful together. We're tribal as a nation, and by nature we're tribal people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of it as this is an individual conquest. And yes, you're the one ultimately doing it, but the fact that there's a whole community behind this, and again, not to mention there's a whole team you would have once you'd finish each day. I think there's a trainer, there's a massage therapist, there's all these different people working on you so you can somehow sleep for your 6 or 7 hours, get up and do it again. So even though I put 98% of it, on you and what you did, there's still those others that help you sort of get to the top, which is nice to pay tribute to them. When you So speaking of that last 6 miles you mentioned in the marathon,
Mm-hmm.
I never was able, because when you train for a marathon, for example, as you know, you typically top out your training at maybe 18, maybe 20 miles.
Yep.
It's a rare training regimen that I've ever heard where you would actually do a full marathon as
Correct.
training for a marathon. And that last, they call it hitting the wall.
Yep.
When you get to the 20 mile mark and you just sort of, balk, you just can sort of just physically and mentally exhausted. And so it's really hard to train for that mental part because you aren't actually doing a full triathlon in training. So you're not getting to that portion where you most need that mental muscle, so to speak. So I guess given what you've done, is there anything you did? Because I assume you're not pushing yourself to, pure exhaustion when you're training. So you're building physical endurance, but anything you can do or any techniques you have for how to actually flex the mental agility, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And it comes in different ways of training. I mean, you've got to do your intervals, you've got to do your strength training. There's different ways to push your body and adapt so that on race day you can go a little bit slower at a comfortable pace, but it's still powerful and you can go longer. And so there's so many different ways to train, but the only way to really understand, what it's like to hit that mile 20 and then beyond is to hit mile 20 and go beyond. And it'll always be the first time you do it in a race. It's uncharted, and hopefully you've trained properly to be able to navigate those moments, and you've been coached and walked through that, and your nutrition's good. But it's like anything. Like, you hear about boxers or MMA fighters that, like, they get ring rust, and it's about you can't simulate a race, and you can't simulate a title fight unless you're in the race or in the title fight. And it's those rounds that get you ready. It's like when you get deep into the basketball playoffs and you look on one side and they've got a lot of playoff experience as opposed to a really rookie team. Even though this rookie team may be better, it's about experience at that level and grinding through it mentally. And the only way to learn those things is not through reading a book, not through watching a tutorial on how to be mentally tough in the game 7 of an NBA finals. Like, you can't do it. You have to be in those situations to gain that knowledge. And so it is true, like, street cred is really real when it comes to, like, race experience and all these things. And you have to do as much as you can to prepare, and then you have to rise up to the moment. And whether you rise or fall in that moment, you're going to learn something about that moment and how to navigate it differently the next time. And that's why racing is so cool, because less than 1% of the field is being competitive and going for a title and winning. Everybody else is out there to see what their potential is. Yeah. And that's what makes this racing and weekend warrior stuff so fun, is because we're just chasing down the best version of who we could be physically, and learning how to manage it all mentally. And are we doing all the small little pieces that lead to our success, and how can we become better? And so golf too, it's why I love golf. Like, I could play the same course 100 times because it's the impossible game, but two, the pins are different. The tee boxes are different. Where I hit my first ball is different. Like, you can play the same course 100 times and it be 100 different experiences, but you gain course knowledge. Same thing with racing. You have to gain race knowledge. In fighting, you got to get ring championship round ready knowledge. And those are all different. So the only possible way in life to get more mentally tough is by having experiences, going through it, experiencing it, and learning from your mistakes.
Yeah. When I did my first Century bike ride, so it's a 100-mile ride, I trained for 6 months. And I would do, my long rides would be upwards of 80, 90 miles. I was physically in really good shape. 6 months, not one drop of rain did I encounter on 6 months of training. And then the race comes. And when I say, James, when I say it was raining, I'm talking torrential downpour so thick, if you put your hand in front of you, you wouldn't be able to see it. And I wasn't sliding all over the place. The bike was fine. Physically, I had no problems at all, but it was pouring the entire race, start to finish. And I remember, I don't know how much of my energy I must have burnt up just being angry. And like, now of 6 months, and this is the time. And I remember yelling a few times, I don't know who I'm yelling at or what. I'm just out of
sheer frustration,
I guess. And I remember thinking, had I had the fortune of having a few of my training rides where it was really raining horribly, I would have gotten used to it, and it would have been no big deal. And I'm not talking riding technique or anything like that, just in terms of dealing with riding with really bad elements. And that aspect, the mental one, was the toughest thing I had to deal with that entire ride. Like, I almost gave up and was just like, F it, several times. And I pushed through, but that was the biggest thing for me.
I'm sure you're familiar with Andy Frisella and 75 Hard.
No.
It's a program where it's on the surface, it looks like a physical program, but really it's a mindset program. And one of the requirements is 2 45-minute workouts a day. And one of them has to be outside. And so it's 75 consecutive days. And so rain or shine, you have to go out there and do one of your workouts outside. And to your point, it's preparing you for when real life happens to you and it's raining. I tell my athletes all the time, like, they're like, oh, it's raining outside, should I do my training session? 100%, that's the most valuable day, because one, your competitor's not out there doing it. But two, if it's ever that on race day, you have an advantage. My son plays competitive lacrosse, and he was outside training in the snow the other day and just doing his reps, just like he normally was. And then he came home the other day and he's like, Dad, tonight's game, it's going to be pouring rain. And we said, good. because he's prepared himself and he's going to be more mentally tough than the other guy out there that's like, oh my gosh, I've only trained on the turf in perfect conditions and now it's raining outside and I'm a marshmallow. My son's going to be out there going, I'm going to crush you and I hope it rains harder because you're just going to get more mentally weak. And to your point, like you have to, my son intentionally was going outside and playing in those conditions. So that come race day, he's like, that's not even on my mental radar. I know how to handle this. It's a normal day. Now I can focus on the task at hand, which is putting that ball in the net and scoring and giving my team an advantage. And like you said, how much of your energy and anger or energy was going towards that unnecessary anger and direction of it that you could have been using to perform physically as a cyclist on that day, which was the purpose of all the training that you did, was to perform the best on that day. And so really proud of my son for watching him do that and having that knowledge at 16 years old. Is just like an invaluable tool set, because he's a physical specimen even at his age, and he's gonna, if he's got that mindset game, I'm pretty excited about his future.
That apple does not fall too far. I gotta say, he's got his dad's grit. You mentioned how as incredible as this feat is, there's no unique physical or genetic gifts, and you've even had tests done just to verify it. But you said that what you do possess is this ability to withstand suffering, which, by the way, in and of itself is sort of a superpower, if you will. And I think you mentioned like the first time you ever noticed this wasn't on a bike or on the run or in the water. It was on a Ferris wheel. I don't know how far back this goes, but I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, early 20s. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And Calgary's world famous for the Calgary Stampede. It's a huge rodeo. It was, long story short, there was a contest to see if you could sit on the Ferris wheel for 10 days. And they put up a cash prize. And really, I was shocked when I was watching people 2 days into it quit and get off. And years later, I recognized they just weren't comfortable.
Wait, James, 24/7 we're talking about?
Sorry?
Like 24/7? Is this all day? Where are there hours where
all day,
you're
all
off?
night? You got two 10-minute breaks during the day to go to the bathroom or eat food, and then you couldn't do anything on the ride. So it truly was a test of controlling your mind, controlling your thoughts.
Yeah.
And you had to have the ability to rectify your past, forgive yourself, and then have the ability to dream about the future and occupy your mind like 24/7, 10 days in a row. And I was shocked watching people quit and get off. And like I said, they were just losing conversations with themselves, because that was the objective of that, was to here's you, good luck kind of thing. And that's when I really understood the power of what we say, how we say, what we can control, what we can't control, and it opened up the floodgates for me as to what's possible.
How old were you when that happened?
22, yep. And so I was coming off my wrestling career, which I had a great foundation of mental toughness and learning.
Yeah, I was going to ask like where it comes from, because it comes from somewhere.
I mean, as a young man, under the age of 12, I was delivering newspapers at 3:30 in the morning at sub-zero temperatures, just trying to put away money to live a dream of some kind.
Was that just all on you? Was that you pushing yourself, or were your parents
100%.
pushing you to do that?
Nope. I just said I understand money. I want a job. This is the only job I can get, and if it's at 3:30 in the morning at negative degree temperatures, that's what it takes. And never missed a day, never missed a door, and did it through rain, hail, sleet, and snow. And I was under 12 years old. I was 10 to 12, and I did that for 5 years, and then really got heavily into sports. But I think I got a lot of toughness as a young kid, freezing cold first thing in the dark Calgary mornings, just throwing papers.
Just to pivot for a second, you're a big proponent of adopting this day one mentality, as you put it. And it's, I don't know if you follow Jeff Bezos, but that was something that he was always really into, is thinking like day one, every day is a fresh day. We're sort of starting over. So easier said than done when you're doing your conquest and you're in extraordinary pain. So would love to hear more about that. And again, as so much of the lessons aren't just about doing a triathlon or even an athletic endeavor, but about life, how does that apply to you, outside the race, just day to day?
Yeah, the concept I want to share is day one day, and the last day.
Mm.
And day one is that excitement, the first day of your job or the first day of your you met somebody and you have that energy. First day you have your child,
Mm.
first that energy that you show up with, the enthusiasm, the optimism. You need to show up like every day is day number one. Could you imagine how like I wish I could be my puppy. My puppy is not a puppy anymore. He's like 2 or 3. He still is so excited to see me every single time. When I leave, it's like and I come back, it's like I've been gone for a decade. And it's the first time he's ever seen a human being. Like that's how you need to show up. And could you imagine waking up every single day with that type of like optimism, love, and excitement for the day?
Mm.
And then one day, this could be your one day. Um, is if I focus on today, am I creating a better future for myself? So I need to focus on just the one day. Because if I focus on one day, it takes care of the future. And then last day. And with this one, this is a unique perspective. Is today the last day I'll ever see my child? Is today the last day I say goodbye to my wife? Is this morning the last morning I wake up beside my wife? And how would you show up and operate today if you knew it was your last day? And so if you can combine all of those one days, your perspective on life totally changes. Show up with the excitement of day one. Show up with the energy that it takes today so that tomorrow takes care of itself. And then live today like today could be the very last time you're ever having this experience. That 3-step process of perspective will change your life.
It's really interesting when you talk about all of these techniques and all these philosophies, and when you're doing something like what you've done, where you got to push the limits physically and mentally, and you mentioned earlier spiritually and all this. Really, I mean, no one's ever done this before. So, who did you turn to for inspiration?
Hmm.
Were there role models that you had, people that pushed you, people that you looked up to?
I've always been huge on sports, and so watching athletes perform and excel and recognizing early because I did sports the rarity of making it to that level and how difficult that path is, and
Mm.
really the excellence that needs to happen on a daily basis for them to be able to do those kind of things. I think I recognized that early in my life, and so I just loved following Canada. We don't have NFL teams or NBA teams or all these things, and so I was what they put on TV was always the championships of all the leagues, and
Mhm.
it was the best teams and the best sports.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was watching all those guys just like excel and recognizing the difference of where I am and what kind of athlete they are, and then maybe what it would take to get there. And so I looked up to a lot of athletes. I looked at my mom as a dreamer and a compassionate home caretaker, and I was like, man,
Mm.
I want to be kind like that. And then I looked at my dad and I was like, man, he is a blue collar, hard ass working firefighter. I want to be like that too. And then I looked at my grandmother who immigrated from Poland and was like this incredible entrepreneur and built the American dream. And I'm like, dude, if I combine all three of those like individuals, I'm going to be superhuman. And so that's kind of been my goal from life, is to take the examples of the excellence in sports to get to that level. My dad's hard work ethic, my mom's caring kindness and compassionate side, and then my mom's like, or my grandmother's like grit and tenacity to build a business as an entrepreneur. And I was like, dude, I could be invincible if I took all three of those best traits and turned them into a drive.
That's interesting, like a tapestry of all of those
Yeah.
woven together here. So, 100 days after you step foot in that water, that frigid water, 19 degrees temperature, you cross the finish line of the run. You completed your 100th triathlon. Do you remember the feeling?
Yeah, big exhale. When you set to do something so daunting, and every
Mhm.
moment could be the next bike crash, or every step could be the moment that your body gives out and your leg breaks, or the concussions catch up with you. And so
Mhm.
it was just like this big sigh of relief and just like this overwhelming, holy cow, we did that. And nobody can take that away from us.
Was there a part of it that was, I can't believe I just did that? Or was it like, well, of course
Mhm.
I did that. I always knew I was going to be able to do it. And you're just sort of Like you didn't need to prove anything to yourself. You knew it the whole time.
Yeah, and to not come off arrogant, like it's that sense of like I told you, I knew we could do that,
Yeah.
because you have to have that kind of swagger in those things, because as soon as you like crack the door and those
Hmm.
disbelief starts to creep in, like you're done before you get started. And so yeah, because you have that level of, we'll call it naive bliss, optimism.
Hmm.
um, you believe it, and if you live that way and you believe it, that's why you manifest things. That's the crazy irony about it. And so when you get to the finish line and you've believed it so intently and you really didn't know how, but you knew it was going to, just not really all the details on how. And so
Yeah.
when you get to the end and you exhale, you're like, I knew we could do it, but holy hell, we just did that? Kind of a mixture of both.
Well, so then I read something, and I'm not kidding. I read this passage in the book toward the very end, and I go to sleep, and I woke up, and honest to God, I'm like, I'm sure I must have either had a dream or I misread it. So I'm going to go back and read it again. And I hope this isn't a spoiler, but or if it is, we can kind of. I mean, just for fun, after you completed 100 of these, you did one more triathlon. I think full distance triathlon the
Yeah.
very next day. So is that right? So it was actually 101 races over 101 days, not even 100. And
Yeah,
so you didn't feel like there was enough torture. You didn't prove your point with 100. What was behind that?
it was interesting. There was many reasons we did that. But I experienced after the 50, everyone was like, well, could you have done one more? And I was like, of course I could have done more, but I didn't want to. And so one of the things I wanted to do as we got closer to the end of the 100 and it was becoming possible, like we're talking deep into the 90s that this became a concept, or revisiting the concept. Could you get to the point where it's like, well, what's one more at this point? And so I didn't want to get asked the question, could you have done one more? I'll show you. And one of the things that I teach from stage is leaders they lead from the front. And
Uh-huh.
if you're a leader, you have to get in the trenches and you have to do what you expect other people to do.
Yeah.
And it was a really great, we recognize this later, the a really valuable moment was I got in the water all by myself where normally there was a team around me.
Hmm.
And I had to swim 2.4 miles by myself. And there's a picture of me where this pool is normally filled with athletes, and in this moment on day 101, it's just me in the water by myself. And it's the realization that, like, if you're fighting for your future and dreams and becoming, just who you want to or believe you can be, there's going to be moments where you wake up and you have to do it by yourself. And no lights are on, no cameras are rolling, and it's those small little moments that you do when nobody else is looking. That's who you really are. And it's those moments that stack on top of each other that is who you become when the lights are on. And so it was just
Hmm.
kind of like this beautiful thing. And my team saw me in the water by myself, and we've been so loyal to each other. They were like, no, you're not doing this whole day by yourself. And they joined me on the bike and the run. And it was this really cool, emotional day that couldn't have gone more perfect.
What if someone was like the very end of the finish line of the run and they're like, well, sure, James, but no way you could do 102. Well,
I
they
would have
should.
just, I would have just said, trust me, I can, but I'm done proving you wrong.
Uh, well, I'm sure those naysayers from the 50-50, that question, that elliptical thing, I'm sure they sort of
Well,
were
and
pretty quiet this time around.
that was the most fun for me because you got to watch people literally go from haters to casual fans to cheering you on at the finish line. Because I tell my kids all the time, look, the cream always rises to the top. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying I'm the best, but I'm saying um, I'm consistent. And sometimes I'm not going to get your approval right in the gates, and your opinion of us is probably judged based off of a headline or a misunderstanding or interpretation of whatever rumor is that you're hearing out there. I tell my kids all the time, like, just be consistent, just be honest and be integrous and be you. And hopefully one day your reputation will be exactly what it's supposed to be. And people will, over through your actions, they will understand who you are at your core and what you stand for.
Mm. You mentioned earlier the word excellent. and this podcast. Are you still there? I think you froze
I'm
up on
here.
me.
No, I'm here.
Okay, on the screen it's frozen. We'll keep going though if you can hear me. So the podcast is called The Art of Excellence, and it's the way I wrap up every interview, which is sort of turning it over to my guest and asking, what does that word excellent mean? And anything that comes to mind, how do you think of the word?
Yeah, to me, being excellence is belief in yourself. I love one of my favorite books is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F.
Hmm.
And it's about giving your power and attention to where it deserves to be, and to not care about the things that frankly don't matter and that are distracting us. And so the art of excellence to me is being authentically you, and then doing a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time. There's I'm going to get cooked either way for saying this, but there's the debate of who's the GOAT, LeBron or Jordan. And
Uh-huh.
to me, it's a lot of little things consistently over a long period of time, and excellence over the span of an entire career. And to me, that puts LeBron in that position. And because he has exuded excellence from stepping on the court on season one to now in his 22nd season, where his stats are equal to an MVP season that he had. And so to me, that's the art of excellence.
It's pretty insane to be doing what he's doing at the age he's doing. But by the way, it's pretty insane for you to be doing it.
Yeah, I'm almost
You're not in
50.
your early 20s.
50 still going. Yeah, that's why I find it funny. And obviously it's a different sport, but I always laugh. Just
Yeah, but
perspective, right?
still.
They're like so and so is at the end of his career at 32, and I'm like 32, man. I wish I could be my 32-year-old self again. But I get it. Different sports have very different time frames.
Yeah, still. So again, the book is Iron Hope: Lessons Learned from Conquering the Impossible. I love the book. I've interviewed, tons of, you know, high octane athletes and explorers and what have you, but I learned a lot reading that book. Honest to God, and I really one of the themes I have is, trying to extrapolate what one does to get to the upper echelons in their field, but taking that out and applying it to life in general, applying it to anything we do in our lives, career wise or otherwise. And there are so many. Uh, it's almost like a metaphor for life to some degree as you're going through it. I really like the way you did
Oh,
that and
thank you. I
came up with all
appreciate that.
these lessons. Well, it's again, I said I didn't know how you'd ever top the 50-50, and you proved me wrong there. I don't know what you do from here, but it it's the most insane feats I've ever heard about, and you just come across as such a really reflective and introspective and down to earth person. So I applaud what you did. I think it's great that you're trying to use that as inspiration for others, and this is fantastic. Thanks for spending time with me. Thanks for spending time on the podcast.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it. Hope your listeners also benefited from today. If you want to find me, it's Iron Cowboy James on Instagram, and our website is www.ironcowboy.com.
Yeah, and the podcasting, I'll make sure I link to that too. What was that one
Awesome.
called?
The Grit Show.
The Grit Show. Okay, got it. Link to all of it. I
And then put a
Yeah.
link to the Emmy nominated documentary on Amazon Prime called Conquer 100.
Okay. Is that out?
Yeah, it's on Prime.
Son of a gun. I would have watched that one. All right, now I got to watch that too.
That's
All
awesome.
right, James.
All
Good
right,
to see you,
Glenn,
my
let me
friend.
know if there's anything I can do for you.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thanks, boss.
Okay. All right, take care.
Bye.